There is an endless sea of podcasts about entrepreneurship. Talking about it, but not living it. We live it every day. This is Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle, talking about real estate investing, but also encompassing general subjects in regards to owning small to medium-sized businesses. And of course, all the struggles that business owners must overcome to be successful. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. And this is Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Inside the Wolf's Den with your hosts Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle. And today we actually have a special guest in the house, Mr. Andrew Miles.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. So Andrew's actually our COO here in our company, and so we thought it would be great to interview Andrew. He's got an amazing story. So kind of give a little brief bio on you, and then we can kind of go from there. So Andrew is a top performing operations leader with extensive experience in developing and implementing practices, policies, and procedures. Uses an entrepreneurial approach to lead organizations through critical transition stages to achieve their next level of success. He gained this experience from building his own company over 15 years and selling it at the optimal time. He thrives on innovating approaches tailored to the needs of the organization and projects. Collaborator with all company departments to design and deliver comprehensive solutions that increase sale and grow market share. Assesses technical challenges and risks to develop appropriate mitigation plans and recommends design improvements to ensure cost effectiveness, safety, and high quality. Motivating leader who develops, mentors, and empowers employees to excel, which I can honestly say that since you've been here, you have been amazing to our staff members. You've been a great mentor, help employees along the way. So thank you again for being here with us. And I would like for you to give us kind of a brief bio on yourself. You have an amazing story.
Oh, thank you. Well, I would say that I started from pretty grounded roots. My family was middle class growing up in upstate New York. We didn't have a lot of money. We weren't destitute by any means, but we spent a lot of time with our family and our friends. And back then, vacation to us was going to see the family, right? So, so we spent a lot of time doing that. And my mom and dad separated when I was 12 years old, and that really put me in a position of having to, one, become a man in the house and take responsibility early. But two, it really gave me a love for the friends that I had, the family that I had, and the fact that I was involved in so many sports when I was young. So, there was no big vacations. There wasn't a lot of money to spend. There was, we had to make our fun for ourselves.
Yes.
And imagination played a big role in that. And I look at where I am today and the fact that I really love to focus on the human element of a business. And I think that's where I really developed that, being able to make my own fun, to make my own relationships as a teammate, as a friend, as a family member. Yeah.
Well, I can totally see that. I mean, just, in the short period that you've been here, our team kind of looks to you and you have that, I guess, comes natural to you to build that relationship with them. So
Thank you. The other side of it is I love also orderly systems. I love policies. I love things like that. And I think I really gained that when I went to a military school. I got an engineering degree as a mechanical engineer at New York Maritime, which is a merchant marine-based school. And I really fit into the military very well. I always tell the story about when I graduated from Maritime at that time, and I don't know if this record's been broken, I only had 25 demerits in 4 years. And you would get 5 demerits for not making your bed correctly or for not wearing your uniform correctly.
So you followed procedure pretty well.
Yeah, I know how to follow the rules, and I fit really well in there. And frankly, I probably would have enjoyed a career in the military. But when you're 22 years old and you're looking at 6 years, it seems like forever.
Right.
And I said, I could probably do something land-based and, out of the military. So I finished my 4 years. I did a lot of time on the sea during those 4 years, really enjoyed it, and I'll never forget those experiences. But what I brought with me from that is a sense of order, the love of being in a system, and that made sense to me. And then I worked for a waste-to-energy power plant for 6 years on Long Island, New York, and I knew that I wanted to leave New York. I kind of always had Texas in my mind as where I wanted to be maybe because I loved Westerns growing up, maybe because I just loved to be outside and hunt and fish and all those things. So I set my sights on getting to Texas, and I wanted to get my MBA. Was not interested in the Columbias or the Harvards. I didn't want a dog eat dog. I'm much more of a laid back person,
Right.
and I really liked Rice University. So I came down here and kind of found my way for a couple of years. I got accepted to Rice and got my MBA and graduated from there in 1999.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was a great school.
Yeah.
And I remember taking my the pre-exams that you take when you go to school. I took it on the university campus, and I remember walking around afterwards thinking, I really want to be a part of this.
Right.
And so I actually quit my job instead of doing it at night or part-time, and gave up a really good salary to go and be fully matriculated for 2 years so that I could graduate from Rice and really get the full experience again of immersing myself in what I was doing.
You must have been. I remember when we were vetting you and speaking to a lot of your references, what they all said, and they all referred back to that when you were at Rice. I think you got a prestigious leadership award or something like that. Out of all the MBA students, you were chosen as the leader. So you must have demonstrated that at an early age. Or
Thank you. Yeah. It seems I've always sought and found those roles of leadership and responsibility all my life. When I was at New York Maritime, I was third in command of the regiment when I was a senior. I was captain of the football team there. Just always looking for those leadership. I was an indoctrination officer, so when you're a junior at Maritime, for the new class coming in, you could sign up to be one of the 30 people in your class that indoctrinate those new people. You have to go back to school 3 weeks early. So I really didn't have much of a summer that year, but I was doing what I loved doing. I loved being a leader, and I love being a part of that whole system. And at Rice, it's called the Mike Wright Award.
Yeah.
And what's really funny about that is the person that won the Mike Wright Award the year before me was Kevin Carlton, who ended up being my business partner that we started Detection with. He actually handed the award to me.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep. And the cool thing about the award is that you are voted upon by your classmates as who is the leader and most exemplary person in your class. So I didn't expect it, but it was a real thrill to get.
Yeah, that's great.
So I had a question on that. So when you say, because it sounds like you were not strict, but you followed rules, very disciplined. How did you go from being a disciplined person like that to an entrepreneur? Which to me, most entrepreneurs I know they break all the rules. They're like they fail, they drop out of school. Not that Joni and I, that's not us, but either. But I'm just saying they're usually on the other side of the spectrum.
That's right. Probably because I had the right people that I started my business with to become an entrepreneur. So my best skills in an entrepreneurial environment is setting the tone for the company, right? Writing the business plan, the pro formas, those are the kinds of things that make sense to me. As far as the creative side of it, I collaborate with others, but for me, it's the setting the boundaries, setting the road ahead. Which
that makes sense because you were in a partnership as well, and so with our partnership, you look at it, there's usually my strength is, out networking with people, and you're a little bit more disciplined than I am. So it takes two to, or a partnership to make it all work sometimes.
Kevin and I were perfectly. We used to call he was the steak and I was the sizzle.
Right, perfect example.
We didn't have an ego about it. The things that he did well, I was happy to have him do, and the things that I did well, he was happy to have me do.
Exactly.
And we formed that, and we made it happen.
Yeah, right. So, talk a little bit about that. I know that you built this successful company, and then you sold it. Tell us about the process and how that all happened.
I'm a firm believer in. When you put yourself out there, good things happen. And if you have confidence, you can put yourself out there and really fail miserably, but at the same time, if you believe you're going to overcome and achieve, you will. And when I was at Enron, learned a couple things there. I know the company is known for the bad things that happen, but that was a handful of people that really ruined it for a lot of really good people. It was the most exciting 3 years of my life professionally before I started my own business.
Yeah.
That place was alive. And one of the things I learned there is, again, putting yourself out there, number one. Number two, the other thing I learned there was the organizational value of pushing decision authority down as low as you possibly can in an organization. There were 30-year-olds at Enron that were making billion-dollar deals, and they were sound deals. Yeah. Enron had put the systems in place to protect themselves from a terminal mistake, And if you were smart enough to come up with a sound business plan and pass it through the hurdles, get it over the hurdles of the
Right.
the analyses, they were willing to back you, and a lot of people did really well there. So I kind of took that with me. And my last rotation at Enron, I was working for a natural gas compressor portion of the company where we were converting natural gas-fired engine-driven compression into electric-driven compression. So you had motors driving the compressors instead of engines driving the compressors. And that was right after the deregulation of electricity, so it all made sense. And my boss was asked to do a speech at the GMRC, the Gas Machinery Research Council. He is scared to death of doing public speaking. I always looked at it as something I love to do, right? So I told him I would do it. I wrote this paper, and I got up in front of the crowd, 1,000 people at the GMRC, and I delivered this 3-hour presentation on the difference between a gas-driven machinery and electric-driven. And there was a gentleman in the class that came up to me afterwards, and he said, number one, I really liked your presentation. I want to publish it. But number two, I've got these guys in Calgary that want to partner in the U.S. So are you interested in doing something with them? And I said, no, I work for Enron. 2 months later, I wasn't too happy at Enron. Enron had collapsed, spectacularly at that point. So I called this gentleman back, and he introduced me to Brian and Al Taylor. Al is the father, Brian was the son, and they had started this compressor optimization business in Calgary, and it was catching on like wildfire in Western Canada. And that was also the time we had a lot of remote data gathering happening. People were putting a lot of sensors out there that were feeding data back to a central office, but nobody was doing anything with the information. And what they did was they built a program that took all this information and did something with it and gave you actionable results and reports on what to do with your compressors. So I said, this looks really interesting to me. So I called Caven and I said, I've got this opportunity, would you be interested? And he said, I think I would. So we talked about it a little bit. We met with Brian and Alan. We hashed out a plan. And we started this business in 2002. And we sold it in 2013. I stayed on until 2015.
Amazing.
And it was just the most thrilling experience of my life, because it was my company. Caven did all the back office stuff. I was the front-facing part of it, and the human interaction. and
Part you love.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. So now you're here with Real Property Management, or the Wolf Empire, we call it, you know. And so, tell us about what intrigued you about our company, and why you decided to come on board with us.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that intrigued me about your company. First of all, we had a mutual friend that really spoke highly of you, and that it always is a big plus in my book.
Yes.
The second part of it is that you had a number of things happening under this roof, and so I was getting a lot of different puzzles to solve, all for the price of one.
Right.
Probably more than you bargained for.
It's turning out to be a challenge, but I love it. I think a chief operating officer, if you want to be that, I think you got to love three things. I think you really need to love the human side of business and be fascinated by people. I think you really need to love responsibility and accountability. And I think you really need to love policy and systems. And I think every day here is the challenge of balancing those three at different levels of the company and across different parts of the company. Yeah. So the fun never ends.
Yeah. And I think those are, what first going back is I think, we get asked a lot, how do you and Joni do it all? And the honest truth is we have very good people. And so, people like yourself and Brett and Amber and Kevin and Haley and Catherine, all the people on the leadership team. So we have really good people behind us that I think are instrumental in helping Joni and I. It looks like we do it all, but it's truly the people that do it. So we give props to all you guys really that make it happen. But I like the three things that you just said, because I think they're total opposite in why so many people need a COO in their business, because those three things are vital, and those are three things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs lack.
Right.
Or, they're the visionaries, they're creative, they're putting all this together, and they lack the
systems
or they hate it. They hate the people part of it and the systems and the accountability and all that. And I think it's what we struggle with for many
absolutely.
years. So
totally.
I think you hit it on the head, really, that your role and what you bring to the organization. So.
And you can really tell it's painfully obvious when people are good at two of those things but lacking in the third, whatever the combination of those three are. But there's plenty of CEOs out there that have failed because they don't know how to treat other human beings.
Correct.
Right. Yes.
One of the things I do here, and you might have noticed, is every morning I come in and I make it a point to say hello to every person in the company and share a couple of words. And I try to remember what's important in their life, anything they had coming up, and just make that connection. So, which is really important to me when I started.
Yes.
I can't come in here or no CEO should go into a company and just start spewing their theories, right? And that we're going to do this, that, and the other. I think you carry in a confidence with you, but the first thing you do is just observe. And you share yourself as a human, and then you start to say, okay, I think we can do things together from a company standpoint.
Yeah, and I love that about you. I mean, that was the first thing that I noticed, that you did that, especially within, our New Mexico office, being remote and even texting them in the morning saying, hey, how's it going, and really trying to build that relationship with them. So I noticed that early on.
I think a lot of CEOs or people think they're going to come in and just, wreck everything or, change everything and, change policies and people and all that. I think you did a good job of just assessing first and building credibility and building that you are just a normal person like they are, and you're building that rapport with them, and so that relationship, that's good.
It's not as calculated a strategy as it's my natural way to do things. So it comes pretty easy.
Right.
Yeah.
And how you balance the three things too,
it's
that's
not
an
easy.
art in itself, because we try and we failed, of course, but
no, you haven't failed. I mean, you have built. The first thing I noticed when I walked in the door is that people love to work here, and people are always ready to help another person. The culture here is fantastic. I think turning that culture into a real snowball effect of growing this company is a challenge that anybody would be have tough time doing. And this is where I get into the difference of I talk about working on the business versus working in the business.
Absolutely.
And I think you guys were just caught in this vortex of somewhere in the middle, right?
Right.
And a lot of people look at a chief operating officer position as pure overhead. In my mind, it's an investment because we're providing the impetus and the catalyst and the resources to get other people to do their jobs who are working in the business to a point where they're growing the business, and you're supporting that. And if that investment starts paying off in growing revenue and protecting that revenue, then I think we all made the right choice.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So, and what do you, I guess, what challenges have you faced, stepping into like our organization? What's some challenges that maybe somebody that's looking to be in that kind of role or is in that type of role, which kind of challenges do you think they're going to face or have you experienced so far?
Number one, I think you need to be patient.
Yeah.
You can't just walk into a place and say, I'm going to change it overnight. And one of the biggest challenges here is we do a lot of things every day. And so not only do we have to do things well, we have to do a lot of things well. And to me, that screams for a system and role definition and leadership, right? And we'll be having a strategy summit here soon, and part of that is to get the leadership team on board. I always think a company is a train. The leadership team is the locomotive that's driving that train down the track, but then each of us also have our individual rail cars that we're the conductor of.
Right.
So we have to not only drive the company, but we have to keep tabs of the groups that we're leading.
Right. Yeah.
That's tough. It's not easy, but I think you're doing a great job so far at that and guiding that. And, I think something else that you bring to the table that probably it goes along the lines with your policies and all that, but also like safety measures and safety protocols. And I think things that get overlooked sometimes just
because we don't have the time to do it. We don't make the time to do it.
That just, I think, get overlooked in a lot of organizations until it becomes a problem.
Yes, until it bites you.
Correct.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about you guys is that you don't have those egos where, and I'm really appreciative of this, is you looked at this and said, we want to get to the next level. We've got probably too much on our plate already. Who's working on the business? Who's working in the business? And then there's that little third part on the side. Who's the evangelical for the business? Who's the one out there promoting our business?
Right.
And I think that's what you guys should be doing and really good at. So if I can transfer some of that working on and working in the business load off of you, I really think that we're, the outward facing part of what we do as a company can really be picked up and appreciated by the public.
Yeah.
Awesome. What do you think for like people like ourselves, or advice would you give stepping into an environment like I guess a smaller business that probably owners were very hands-on, and what advice would you give to the owner, and then advice would you give to the employee stepping into that position? Because I think I think the owner needs to hear just as much of this as maybe the guy that's stepping into that position.
Right. Yeah. I would say you have to have a sense of humility. Yeah, really have to be able to be patient, look at people, work with the owners. A lot of times, and I've had this professional experience before, where the owner of the business just can't seem to let go and let the people that do their job well do their job well.
Yeah.
And they really want to micromanage or hold on. And I think that you have to realize that there's different parts of a business, and you have to really respect the people and their positions. And if I have to spend half my job making sure that you're doing your job, well, then one of us is doing something wrong.
Right.
And so I think, the COO role, you have to come in with the confidence and trust. That's another, kind of unspoken ingredient. And the trust to let people do their job the way they want to do it. I always say, executives should set the ditches
Yes.
and let everybody walk down the road. Nobody's going to walk down the road the exact same way, but as long as they're not falling into the ditches, we're doing okay. And,
Right.
I think if you're patient and you let people be themselves and do their thing, I think everything's going to be okay.
Yeah,
So,
and I agree with that. I mean, that's probably one of the big reasons how we were able to grow is, once we were able to trust our people and, hey, we hired you for a reason. You're smarter than us, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
And you run with it.
Right. And Shawn and I just had this discussion the other day when we were kind of developing a new policy. I said, nobody ever develops an ironclad perfect policy. There's always going to be that 1% of people that figure out how to game the system in their favor. What I want is something that can be uniformly enforced and fairly enforced by our leaders, and that the leaders buy into, and then we can go down the road with that policy.
Right.
But there's always going to be somebody. If you worry too much about somebody taking advantage of you, you're wasting a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
And the accountability part was always a struggle for us. I mean, I think over the last, whatever it's been, 15 years that we've had employees, maybe it's just our personality. I don't know. We've always struggled with that piece of it. And I mean, what advice can you give to people like myself that struggle with the accountability part of running a business or managing people?
I think the tough part is having the policy in place and sticking to it whenever possible. Like I said, there's a balancing act between humans and the policy. There are some people that you have no problem giving a little bit of leeway to because they're a hard worker. They're maybe facing a tough time in their life and they need some, a little bit of, just let this slide a little bit because the next day they're going to be here 100%. And then there's some people that just can't do that, and that no matter how much you try to get them to do something the right way, they're just going to not do it. And one of the toughest things that I learned over my career is making those hard decisions and, telling people things they don't necessarily want to hear.
Right.
And a lot of times firing. At this point now, I've fired more people than I've ever thought I would. And you get used to it. You do. Not that you ever enjoy it. And some of them really hurt. But most of the time, if you make the decision, it's the right decision. The actual act of letting somebody go or holding somebody accountable to what they promised to do, as long as you set
you say
clear expectations,
exactly. Right.
then you're in the right, and you can always hold on to that. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
And I mean, as far as what advice would you give? You've nailed a lot of them, and I think you said a bunch of nuggets already. But what advice would you give to somebody looking for your position, looking to either step into that kind of role or position, or aspire to be in that kind of role? What advice would you give them?
I would say take a good measurement of yourself and realize if this is something you really want to do. Do you want the position, or do you want to look really good? Because what comes with it is a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the whole company funnels up through the chief operating officer, and I'm responsible for whatever happens below me. You can't prevent everything. But again, if you have the right systems in place, you can do that. So you have to really take a good look at yourself and see if you're willing to not only care about people, put systems in place and follow them, and if you have the confidence to handle the responsibility that comes with the job.
Those three things.
Yeah, self-reflection. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And as far as again, you addressed, I think, a lot of it with as far as the business owners, but would you say, I think it's hard for business owners to let go. We're part of a lot of masterminds and groups that, they struggle with this, and the COO always gets brought up, and then people, I think even
we built the company, so you don't want to see, a lot of them don't want it to fail or,
They think if they're going to put all of it in,
they're going to lose control.
Yeah.
They're going to lose control.
I think it's control
Yes.
is probably the biggest issue. But so how can you develop that trust over time with somebody? How do you find, how does that even start? I guess is it that role. And I think probably the biggest thing, and you said already, time, I think is a big factor in giving enough time to make it work.
Time, and one of the things I always say is vulnerability. You guys know everything about me already. There's not a whole lot more for me to hide, right? So
right.
I think if you put yourself out there and people see that, they're much more willing to trust you that much more quickly, because you're sharing a part of yourself. You're sharing yourself with them, and
right.
And they know that, they feel that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we met multiple times and had several conversations to get to know you personally before making that decision.
Do you think they have to be in your industry, or do you think you should try to find somebody within the industry, or do you think it can be somebody outside the industry stepping in?
That's a great question. As you guys know, I have no experience in real estate whatsoever, but I think I've seen enough businesses over years where I can fit in.
Right.
When I first started my own business, thankfully, it was in the area that it was in oil and gas, which is where I've been very comfortable, and I've spent a lot of my career in, or at least the energy industry. And so I think, as a first-time CEO, depending on your seasoned, how much you've been seasoned in your experience, you may want to stick to what you know. But if you have just solid business understanding and comprehension, and you think big, and you can see the big picture, you can probably try just whatever you want to try.
Yeah.
And what's some action steps that you look to implement within our company, but then within maybe your first 6 months, year, and then what's some actionable steps that you've taken or you are taking, and then advice you'd give to somebody to start?
I would say the main goal for me is to get the train going down the track all at one speed, right? One car can't go slower than the others. The train has to move all at the same speed. So kind of balancing all those things along the way is what I'm going to try to do. And the way I think to do that is to create a long-term plan, and then start to build back. If we know where we want to be in, say, 5 years, what do we have to do at the 3-year mark? What do we have to do at the 1-year mark? And what do we have to do this quarter to begin our snowball going down the mountain and start that train moving down the track? So I'm going to try to put in, I'm going to build policies or amend policies that I see need amending. I don't think you do it with a hammer. I think you do it softly, and you get buy-in. And if you do get that buy-in, then people start owning this company.
Yes.
And they come in every day saying, I care about this company, and I refuse to be the weak link in the chain. I am going to come in, I'm going to do my job, and people are going to be able to count on me. And if we get that, and I think we're pretty close to it already, but if we get that, there's no stopping us.
Yeah.
And that's a good point that you brought up, because I think it gets brought up in a lot of masterminds we're a part of, that I don't know what you call it, hard hammer or hitting, there's a lot of guys that they want to come in and just bust it all up. And then can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think there's a lot of them that do want to come in like a wrecking ball almost, and they change things, and that's not always maybe the right approach, but at the same time, maybe there is some.
Well, I think also you can't control everything either. There's some companies that, when you come in, you're just like, oh gosh, I gotta,
change over the whole company.
Because there's things that are happening to, try to quickly fix, so.
Yeah. There's turnaround specialists out there, and I have done that in some ways with a couple of companies I've worked with, but, it's hard to do a 180. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And if a company's going this way and they need to be going this way, you cannot make a 90-degree turn. You've got to start doing this.
Right.
And it's really just having the patience. And, one of the things you guys told me, in fact, it kind of surprised me. Shawn was like, we know it's going to take a year or two for you to do everything you want to do here. I feel like it's going to be a lot faster than that because of the culture.
Yeah.
But a lot of companies, it does take a year or two to really start changing direction, depending on how much direction needs to be changed.
Right.
But I think we're perfectly heading in the right direction, and we're pretty close already. And the response I've gotten has been so positive, that I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to do just in the next calendar year.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think I agree 100%. And yeah, it is. I think people need to, that are listening to this and looking and at that position to do something like this, they have to give it time. And
you have to be, I think you have to be ready too as the owners of the company, because I mean, you and I we were ready, we were ready to grow and to have somebody come in here
but we were ready also, I think, from a not stress, but
well, to let go of the
I've had enough.
I've had enough. I need to tag me in, or tag me out. But I think we were both ready. Yeah, and I think it was. We definitely weren't like at a point where we said, hey, we want to exit and sell, but we also knew the company needed to grow and it had a lot of potential, and there's several different companies, but we needed help, and you and I couldn't do it.
Yeah, and we needed to trust that process too, because I think a lot of owners of the company, like you said, they have egos, and they don't want to let go. So it makes it difficult for any COO coming into the company to try to pull things away from them if they're not ready.
Correct. And I think as an owner, sharing my 2 cents is that you got to give it time. I don't think enough time is given in a lot of situations,
right.
And I think it's gonna. Of course, we all want it, immediately, and like we hire you and you're going to fix everything and it's all like we're done, and it doesn't work that way.
Let us know when we're ready. Thanks.
But we got to be, you as an owner got to be very patient and trust the process, trust, that you got the right person and what the things that they're implementing is going to work, but it's going to take time. I think anything, you don't build a company overnight. So what makes you think that somebody is going to step in that role and fix all your mistakes? It takes time. And so
what's amazing is as I look back over the 13 to 15 years that we had detection, you realize how much you accomplished in that amount of time, but every day it seemed like we were accomplishing very little.
Right.
But you start adding all that up, and it goes. It's amazing at the end of the day. You look back and said, I did that, or we did that as a team. But the other thing, and I think Shawn, you'll agree with this, is when in order to build that trust between us and from the CEO position, you have got to have the confidence to share everything you're doing with the owners. Correct. So there's nothing that has happened here that I haven't let you know was going on. Not that I've asked your permission every time, but I've said, this is what I'm planning to do here. And sometimes I've come to you and said, I really want your input. But, and you're not afraid to give me your input, and I'm not afraid to take it. So if you have that, you too. So as we have that relationship going down the road, I'm never going to do anything that's big. I know what to ask permission for, and I know what you guys would be okay with me.
And I think there's been a good balance of that so far. And I think, and maybe, you can tell me if you think we're overstepping at times, but I think it's been so far it's been a good mix. And I think, they're still learning. So I think as you keep growing and understanding maybe our mindset or where we're coming from, you can start making a lot more calls without even consulting. But I mean, I think we've fully trusted the process, and it's been a good experience. I've enjoyed and been impressed, and it's
we're like, why didn't we think of that?
It's like it seems so simple. It's like, wow, that seems like a lot better way of doing this. But it's been refreshing, and so we've enjoyed you joining our team, and I think there's going to be so many possibilities and growth and opportunities for us, but also all our staff and employees and the new people that we are yet to hire. I think we're just on the verge of really making a difference and contributing a lot to Houston and Albuquerque and all the markets that we touch. So, and the investors. So,
and to me, recruiting is a huge part of what we're going to do. And I want to build a solid recruiting team. The more time you spend getting the right people on board, the better off and the faster we can take this thing going.
Yeah, and what were the 3 things again? People,
policy, and accountability.
Accountability.
People, policy, and accountability, guys.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you joining us, and
I enjoyed it.
I hope everybody got a lot from that, and I'm sure you're always. Is it okay if they email you and touch base? So reach out to the show.
Sure.
Yeah. In the show notes will be our email for the podcast. If you have questions about hiring a CEO or I'd be happy to jump on a call with you guys and what we did to find Andrew and vet him and all that. But then also maybe if you have questions for Andrew, we'd love to hear from you. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you. And we'll see you all next week. Please share this. If you liked it, please rate it, and have a great week.
See ya, everyone.
You've been listening to Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle. Tons of entrepreneurial podcasts are out there. Talking. But Joni and Shawn are living it every single day. Their portfolio now includes many franchises and medium-sized businesses. We talk about the trials and motivators of successfully running a business. Join us again soon for another podcast. But until then, reach out on the website at InsideTheWolfsDen.com, on Facebook at Inside the Wolf's Den, on Instagram at Inside the Wolf Den. We'll see you again soon. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. We'll see you next time.